how are you?
Hey, Nick. Good to see you and hear you. Doing
Yeah,
well here.
I'm so used to hearing you, even though I usually see you, but then I don't see you again because all I do is hear you on the podcast, but now I see you and hear you.
Yeah, what a gift to the world. They get to not only hear us, but also see us. Yeah, we graduated.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is a whole new world. So how are things going?
Hey, pretty good. Just got back from Pennsylvania here about 10 days ago on a visit to Central PA to see my amazing family, my mom, my sisters, my nephews, and a niece. And not quite as important as that, but also very important. I got to stock up on snacks because, as everybody knows, Pennsylvania is the snack capital of the world, the chip capital of the world. And so we really, of course, we drive the Suburban, and I only had Holly and Toby with me for this trip because Kaylee and Desi and Christy all had to work. So it's just the three of us. And we get taking a big Suburban up there because Christy's got the Prius. And we were full when we went home because we just were overloaded with a freezer full of butcher shop stuff and just as many bags of chip as you can stuff into a Suburban. So, and this is what I got left, Nick. This way I got one bag of Utz puffin corn, one bag
That's it?
out of like 10. And I got one bag of my favorite, I think you know this, Middlesworth chips. This is it.
Yes.
So we went through tons of snacks. You know, all my Tasty Claire pies, Tasty Cake, Tasty Claire pies are now gone. All my Utz honey cheese curls are now gone. But I've got those 2 bags left, and so I'm going to be, savoring those very slowly and hiding them from everybody else.
Yeah, that's something to think about is when the big trip out west takes place, we will have to. The packing for the way out from Pennsylvania for our side, we are going to have to dedicate hundreds of pounds of storage capacity to the goodies that can only come from Pennsylvania.
Right.
That's something to consider. Strongly consider.
And we may have to pay extra as we do at an airport for additional baggage, right? If you have to weigh out all those snacks.
That's true. True. I'm going to have to look up whether or not at any point on 80 or one of the other major roads, we'll have to pull
if they have
into
those truck stops. If we have to pull off and say, you're overloaded with snacks. You're going to have to.
You're going to have to leave some of the Utz behind or Tasty
there's a
Cake
picnic
behind
table
with
right
us.
over there. Go eat. Right.
Which also would be an option.
Yeah.
As well. Although, things are good here. Things are really good. We survived the first storm last week, which was interestingly all rain and no snow, but heavy winds. Yeah. Wow. So actually, there was a day off of school because there were 8 schools without power and 1 million down trees in our area. So it was pretty rough. There were people without power for up to 3 days. Which it took a toll for sure. Mm-hmm. And it looks like the upcoming snow prediction up here is going to be a bust, which is a bummer only because it would have made what is a 3-day weekend a 4-day weekend if Tuesday had produced the snow. So
you're not forecast to get anything, Nick?
They're forecasting a little, but not enough that it would get us a day off at this point. The timing is still bad, but the amounts that they're saying now aren't good enough. So, yeah.
So amazingly, down here in the South in Tennessee, we are forecast to get 3 to 6 inches, which likely means the kids will be off for about 4 weeks.
Wow.
They were already off 2 days this week for the potential, for the potential of dangerous weather. I mean, it's crazy. They just cancel so quickly here. It's unreal.
Unbelievable. Wow. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a totally different area and different levels of preparation. You know, the interesting thing was when we got the snow last weekend, so not this last weekend, my brother was coming home from the cruise gig he was on. We had to go pick him up at the airport, and it was treacherous driving. Like they didn't pre-treat the roads. We probably got about 4 to 5 inches up here in Berks County. And then as you got further south towards Philly, there was none, but it was a little crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Nick, I guess it happens everywhere, right? When there's the potential for a storm, everybody goes to the store and buys bread and milk. Have you ever seen the online video, like the song, the bread and milk song?
Oh, yes.
That's hilarious.
People for this one, they actually told people not to go out and get the bread and milk because it was going to pass by so quickly.
Oh, okay.
But still, the night before, you drive past the supermarket, that's crowded out of the wazoo. But it's better to be prepared,
I guess, yeah.
Ah, well, for our today's segment, right, we're moving into the final blog post with the 16 keys to educational leadership. You think should we kick in and get started on that?
Absolutely, Nick. Take it away.
All right. So we are going to take a look at the final of the leadership keys. We've been going through these steadily when it's been my turn to blog. So we'll take a peek here, and we start with number 13. Remember, this is the business we've chosen. Embracing the challenges and rewards of educational leadership. Embracing the challenges and rewards of educational leadership is essential for success. The quote from Hyman Roth in The Godfather 2, "This is the business we've chosen," resonates deeply in this context. It signifies the acceptance of the inherent complexities and triumphs in the field of leadership. The Stanford Center for Opportunity Policy and Education found that effective leaders demonstrate resilience and passion, driving positive change in their schools. A real-life example of this is Jamie Escalante, a teacher who overcame significant challenges to develop a successful AP Calculus program in an underfunded Los Angeles high school. Everyone knows this story. His story, much like the message conveyed in the quote from The Godfather 2, illustrates the importance of acknowledging and embracing the specific nature of the chosen path in leadership. By accepting both the responsibilities and rewards, leaders can maintain their determination and resilience, crucial for making a meaningful impact in their respective domains. Number 14, be vulnerable and apologize when warranted. Admitting mistakes and taking corrective actions fosters trust and respect. Research by UPenn's Graduate School of Education found that leaders who display vulnerability and humility, that's Jim Collins' research too, were more successful in building strong relationships with their teams. Apologizing is an effective conflict resolution strategy because it demonstrates humility, empathy, and accountability. A positive real-life story that exemplifies this is an incident regarding Ken Chenault. He was the former CEO of American Express. During a crisis when the company faced pretty serious allegations, Chenault took a bold step by publicly apologizing for the company's mistakes. Imagine that, a credit card company apologizing. His sincere apology and commitment to rectify the situation diffused the potentially explosive situation, restored the company's reputation, and strengthened the trust of customers and stakeholders. This approach to leadership, where a leader acknowledges their mistakes and offers a sincere apology, shows genuine care for the feelings and perspectives of others involved. It fosters trust and respect, allowing for more constructive dialogue and collaboration. Research published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology indicates that apologies can significantly reduce feelings of anger and facilitate the reconciliation process. Big surprise there. Ultimately, apologizing can help repair damaged relationships, restore harmony, and pave the way for more effective problem solving and collaboration in the future. 15. Promptness is the courtesy of kings. Punctuality and timeliness reflects a leader's respect for others and their commitment to their work. According to research published in the Journal of Educational Administration, leaders who consistently demonstrate punctuality foster a culture of accountability and professionalism within their organizations, leading to higher levels of staff engagement and commitment. To illustrate the importance of being on time, consider the fable of the timely merchant. In this fable, there was a merchant who renowned for always being on time. Whether it was meetings with traders, market days, or paying his dues, he was never late. This punctuality earned him great respect and trust in the community. One day, a new merchant came to town. He was talented but often late, causing disruptions and mistrust. When a great opportunity arose to trade with a distant kingdom, the community had to choose a representative. Despite the new merchant's talents, they chose the timely merchant for his reliability. The timely merchant's punctuality not only secured a prosperous deal for the community, but also a long-lasting trade relationship with the distant kingdom. The fable teaches us that being punctual can open doors to opportunities and build lasting trust and respect, a lesson vital for leaders in any field. Finally, number 16. Less is more, simplicity in leadership. Simplicity in decision-making can lead to more efficient and effective outcomes. A study in the International Journal of Leadership and Education found that leaders who embrace simplicity by focusing on clear, concise goals and communication strategies were more successful in implementing change and achieving desired results. Mike Schmoker, in his book Focus, one of my favorite education books of all time, advocates for a simplified and more targeted approach to education reform, emphasizing the importance of concentrating on a few essential elements, such as clear and coherent curriculum, effective instruction, and/or like authentic literacy, as an example. In contrast, A notable non-example from the business world is the case of Xerox in the 90s. I think in college, Rick, didn't pretty much every student at some point study the Xerox case in like one of our, like some class that you had, like they always, how did I feel? Xerox attempted to diversify its business too broadly, venturing into various technology segments simultaneously. This lack of focus led to a dilution of its core competencies in photocopying and printing, ultimately resulting in significant financial losses and a loss of market share. Xerox's failure to maintain a focused strategy illustrates the pitfalls of trying to do too many things at once, underscoring the less is more philosophy. By cutting through the clutter of competing initiatives and priorities, leaders can direct their time and energy towards practices that have the greatest impact, as shown in Schmoker's work. This approach is crucial for transforming schools and culture. In conclusion, these 16 keys to educational leadership are not just stepping stones, but rather a GPS for navigating the complex terrain of education. From embracing the roller coaster ride of challenges and rewards, to the humble art of a well-paced apology, the punctuality that could put a Swiss watch to shame, and the wisdom to know that sometimes less really is more, these principles are more than just guidelines. They're the secret sauce for educational success. Whether you're a seasoned educational sage or a budding pedagogical pioneer, remember, in the grand classroom of life, these keys might just be the master set to unlock potential, inspire change, and perhaps occasionally save the day just in time for lunch duty. And there they are, the 16 keys to educational leadership.
Wow, yeah, and for folks who are just tuning in now, you really need to kind of back up and go through the first 12 of these. But these are what a great four to kind of end on, Nick. I got kind of just reactions, a few longer to each of these, and then a few questions for you. Gosh, I think it's number 13. The idea of embracing challenges and rewards. I guess what came to mind for me is something that we've talked about in the past on the show. You mentioned several times kind of this idea in there, vocational resilience. I think that word resilience is a few times. And for me, what was resonating with me is when we've talked about, and even presented about out in Arizona, we talked about a sense of calling and how that will sustain you over a career, because it's so important, because those two things we can't kind of understate. Like, yeah, there are lots of challenges, but there are lots of rewarding days too. An idea of just kind of soaking in, leaning in, appreciating both. And it's just part of what you do. It's part of what you're called to do. It's the work you've chosen, right? As you've said. So, I mean, that one just resonated with me really strongly as, hey, I chose to do this and I'm all in, and for the good and for the bad. Reminds me of a marriage in some ways. Like,
yeah,
I'm in this, and it's just, this is what it is. So yeah, I can, there's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, and it's all just part of the ride. So yeah, I like that one a lot, for lots of different reasons, Nick.
Yeah, that's what that could be, there could be a whole entire podcast dedicated to just resilience in marriage, or any relationship, could be sibling, could be child, friendships. I mean, so many applications there for sure.
Yeah, great point. Just think parenting. Oh my gosh, what a great example of yeah, there's going to be good days, bad days, good stuff, bad stuff, certainly challenging stuff. And so it's just part of the ride. It's part of the adventure of life. And so it's just what you chose to do. You chose to have kids. You chose the good and the bad. You choose to be a teacher. You choose to be a school counselor. You chose the good and the bad. So just embrace it. Learn from it. Get better at it. I mean, yeah. So it's just, what a great kind of wisdom for life, really, there, I think, is woven into just that one. Number 14, be vulnerable and apologize. So yeah, my personality, my disposition reads this, and I'm just like, yes, absolutely. This is truth right here that I'm reading, Nick. I love this one. But I'm as I play devil's advocate on this one, how do you respond? How do I respond? How does anybody respond when they combat this what I see as truth with if you're vulnerable and apologize, it shows weakness and or an admission of guilt. So I'm not going to do that. I mean,
right. I think there's two parts to that. I think part one, and I think with relative confidence, I think I can say in like 25 years or so in education, I don't think an apology has ever backfired that I can remember. Now, there may have been times in really contentious special education IEP type situations where we were advised certain things not to say, or to apologize for. And what I mean by that is not apologizing as a admission of guilt, but apologizing that someone was upset by something that happened.
Okay.
And those are two different things. You know what I mean? Like, we can still disagree, but I can still apologize that we didn't meet your expectations, even if your expectations were absolutely ridiculous and not based in reality.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And I think we may have talked on the podcast before, but going into any contentious meeting, particularly with parents, I have found, if you can sincerely apologize for something, and I don't mean like a passive aggressive apology, if you find a piece in there where you can empathize with where the parent's coming from and apologize and maybe find a way to make it better for them and their family, then that generally diffuses the situation because you're hearing them and they feel like they're getting somewhere, obviously in a situation that's important to them, because you wouldn't be meeting or discussing the situation if it didn't matter to them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I shouldn't say never, but yes, is there a very, very, very small percentage of crazy people out there that really are maybe arguing for the totally wrong reasons, just to get attention on Facebook or because they are so disillusioned or disconnected from reality? Yes. But that is, I mean, come on, 9.9 times out of, or 99.9 times out of 100 times, that's not the case.
Yeah.
You really get more bees with honey, which was an earlier, educational key, by finding that. And also just the preparation for that apology means you have to reflect and you have to find that empathy. You know what I mean? So you are actually preparing for that meeting and trying to do what's not only in your best interest, but the best interest for everybody else. So that would be my response to that weakness part, or the possible admission of guilt part there.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%, Nick. I do. I mean, I think, for somebody who would say, yeah, no, I'm not going to be vulnerable, I'm not going to apologize to anyone, they're going to be looked at like a jerk, and it's not going to nurture a positive interpersonal relationship. So, people may buy in because they have to, but not because they want to. There's all kinds of problems with that kind of approach in leadership, in life, as a parent. That one comes to mind. I think there's all kinds of reasons why that probably not the best approach. May work in circumstances, but for what you want, but overall not the best approach, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree for sure there.
Nick, number 15, promptness and the courtesy of kings. I love this one. I think what I kind of thought of was, for me, that's pretty easy. Like, I'm always early to things. That's just kind of by nature, and some of that is personality. And I think, well, one of the things we know in psychology is the big 5 personality characteristics. One of them is conscientiousness, and people who go into the field of mental health, and a lot of times education as well, are highly conscientious individuals who aren't going to be late for anything anyway. But while it is a personality characteristic that is somewhat kind of interwoven into your DNA, it's also a behavior that can be learned, right? So
sure.
There's no excuse for it either. So, well, it's just not my personality. I'll show up when I want to. Well, no, it's a behavior that you can learn, and you can appreciate the positive kind of results from it, which you've outlined for us quite well here. The other thing that came to mind was, while I am naturally conscientious and naturally going to show up on time, I'm reminded of Penn State football, my few years playing in college. And Joe Paterno's, his motto was, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late.
You're late.
And you didn't want to be late because you get called out and yelled at in front of the whole team of 120 people. And it was not pleasant. So I was never late to a team meeting or where I should have been because of that. Because I did not want to be the one kind of under his fire or under the fire of the head trainer, because he was mean looking. So at any rate, that further ingrained something that was already natural for me. So I always show up early. I'm rather neurotic about showing up early, and which sometimes Christy and I kind of it doesn't always match, right, our personalities. But that one certainly resonates with me for that reason.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that would also be from the psychological standpoint, from starting a meeting on time, right? If you're the one starting the meeting and you're late, then that tells everyone else that it doesn't matter. This meeting's not important. Or it tells them the meeting's not really starting at 3:00. So they're going to be late. when something has to start on time.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you talked about in our profession. We, one of those character traits is inherently staff meetings, faculty meetings, people are always late. Like it is for some reason, that's like one of those things where it's difficult to start on time.
Yeah.
And look, there's 9 times out of 10, there's good reasons for that, but not always. Mm-hmm. The final piece is if you're meeting with a stakeholder of some sort, you're telling them again that 1, this isn't important, but 2, you're giving them the opportunity to be angry at the start of a meeting where you probably need something or want something.
Yeah.
And
yeah, great point.
That's not, not necessarily the way you want to roll. There was a different district, a different time where a superior would always be late to any meeting that they set up. Wow. All right. Now, this person who in their position, there were bound to be times that they would be late to things, right? But this person, would never text in advance or anything like that, or call in advance. But here was the kicker. Whenever they would walk into a meeting late, they always had a cup of Starbucks coffee with them. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
It says that I had time to get my Starbucks, but I didn't have time to be on time for the meeting. Even if that Starbucks had been gotten an hour before, you know what I mean? You don't walk into the meeting with it. Yeah. So there's, again, just a psychological piece that can play into, that type of thing. So,
yeah. Nick, I'm thinking of something happened to me maybe about, 2 months ago. I'm going into year 14 of teaching in higher ed now, and of teaching college classes. And for the first time in 14 years, 2 months ago, I was late to class. And this is what happened. So I'm at home and getting ready to start class, and the internet completely shuts off. There's a storm in the area. Internet's gone. I have a backup system, and that doesn't work. So I'm panicking now, and I'm trying everything I know to kind of troubleshoot and fix, and it's not working. And so now it's like 7 minutes before 6 o'clock. It's supposed to start at 6 o'clock, and I'm always on there 10 minutes early. And now I'm panicking, and I have no other choice now. I have no time to do anything else. So I get in the Suburban, and as fast as I can, I drive to Subway in town, which I'm outside of town. So it's taking close. Me. And while I'm driving, I'm trying to call like one of my students. I have their number. They're not answering. I don't have service even to call them. And I show up at the Subway, and it's like 7 minutes after 6 o'clock. And I pull up my laptop and I open things up again. And all of my students came, they stayed. They came, but they stayed. And it gave me an opportunity to do number 14, Nick, to apologize. Say, I am so sorry. This is incredibly unprofessional. I apologize. This is what happened. I walked through with them, and it gave me an opportunity just to show my appreciation for all of them staying. When those professors late, no class, every one of them stayed kind of online live with me. And it just was something that kind of we backed up on and talked about later throughout the semester as well. Just what a great class they were. So, just a combination in those two things for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It worked. You worked 2 into 1 on that one.
Yeah.
Nick, well, that shows the respect they have for you too.
Oh, well, yeah, gosh. And I was and still am very appreciative of them. Fortunately, I get to work with about half of those students again this semester. So I'm excited about that.
That's awesome.
Number 16. Back to the basics. Keep it simple. What resonated for me, Nick, is a presentation that coming up in Arizona in a month, because the name of the presentation is Back to Basics. It's keeping it simple, and it's smiling. It's about smiling and using students' names. It's not about this, new curriculum that's been evidence-based and research-based. It's not about accreditation standards. It's not about complex programming or theories. It's about smiling, teaching kids the value of smiling to each other, right? And teaching them about the value, and teaching teachers about the value of using students' names. So those are two simple things that it seems silly that we even have to present on those kind of things. And yet, right?
Yep.
We do, because it's something that maybe used to be common sense. It used to just be part of the way we interacted with each other, but is increasingly kind of going away. And I think when those kind of basic kind of interpersonal skills go away, it's important for us to remind each other about their value. And let me just run through a few of the research kind of findings for you on these two things. And I'll do it quickly, Nick, but most of whom our listeners won't be able to be out there in Arizona to hear this, let me just run through a few of these.
Okay.
Smiling stimulates endorphins, which make us happy and reduce anxiety. Gosh, we could all use things to help reduce anxiety, couldn't we? Smiling is contagious. It makes other people happy. Voluntary smiling, or Duchenne smiling, helps to regulate emotions and elicits positive emotions. Happiness, either voluntary or involuntary, causes, this is a big one, causes or is caused by academic success. I'm going to repeat that. Happiness causes academic success. All these findings from peer-reviewed journal articles. Smiling is an effective coping mechanism for managing difficult circumstances and distress. Genuine smiling creates an atmosphere of safety and interpersonal trust. Couple more on smiling. Smiling promotes and primes displays of higher order morality, such as altruism and selflessness. Smiling enhances empathy and connection with others, strengthening bonds and cultivating healthy relationships. And the last one on smiling I got for you, smiling is critically important skill, which sets the stage for vocational success. And let me go to just a few more on the importance of using students' names, those of us who are in public education. Using students' names develops a sense of community in the classroom. It improves student-teacher relationships and conveys caring and investment to students. It conveys respect. It results in more positive student evaluations of instructor performance. It enhances student participation and student learning. And promotes positive interactions between students. So not between students and teachers, but between students and students. It's considered an educational best practice. It makes difficult subject matter more accessible. It helps marginalized students feel more comfortable to participate in classroom discussions. And here's a few negatives. Neglecting or refusing to use student names dehumanizes them and can be considered a microaggression. So again, Nick, it seems silly, right, to do a presentation on using student names and smiling. And yet, I think that's where we are. We have to be reminded of some of the basics. And that's kind of the gist I got from number 16 is keep it simple. You know, let's remember the basics because they have more of an impact. There's so many directions we could go in, but what really matters, what matters the most, and let's make sure we're doing those things well.
Yeah, I can't add anything to that. The only other piece I would add to the less is more mentality would be for people in perhaps in leadership positions that are holistic in terms of creating environments like this would be to say that in most situations we hear we see the brand new shiny thing and we say, oh, this is cool, let's do this. Mm-hmm. But we don't stop and say, if we're going to put this on the plate, what are we taking off the plate?
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you've got 10 shiny things on a plate and you're not doing any of them well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, that sounds like a great presentation. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
People in Arizona are going to go see that, which I'm sure they're going to.
All right. Hey, Nick, a couple questions for you. First one is, why 16? When you kind of went to kind of cognitively put this together and you came up with 16, not 10, not 20, but 16. And so what was it about when you were kind of organizing your thoughts on 16 keys that kind of just ended up with this many?
I wound up having actually about 24.
Okay.
And I said for part one was combining them. So there were some that were tied pretty closely together that could be combined. Then I came up with the ones that I would eliminate altogether. And I ran them by several principal friends to see whether they thought they were important or not important. Once I had narrowed down to 18, 20 maybe, I shared the list with a few, trusted people to see what their opinions were. Got rid of a few at that point. I tried to get it down to 10 and decided I was like, no, there's definitely at least 15. I can't get away from the 15. And then finally towards the end, I was like, well, 10 or 15 is what you always see, or 5. You always see the top 5, the top 10, the top 15, or the top 20. So I was like, 16, 4 times 4. I'm going to go 16, Sweet 16. I don't know. Yeah. It had a sports feel to it, I guess, too.
Yeah, this process that you went to kind of mirrors what you were just talking about in number 16, right? You started off with what, 24, and kind of you kind of vetted it with other professionals, and you kind of narrowed it down to kind of notice the 16 basic kind of pieces here and keys that I want to talk about. So that's kind of neat that kind of mirrored the last one. Nick? I don't remember if you had told us at the beginning of this or not, but are these in order of importance?
They're not
1 to 6. No, okay.
They're not. No. At one point, I tried to like organize them from a theme perspective, similar to the assets. In fact, that was kind of inspired by the assets. Like, oh, if I kind of group these together. But as I was doing that, it started to get harder to like write them or separate the examples I wanted to use because they started to mesh together a little bit too much. So then eventually the way I finally like ordered them was what I felt like would be a good professional wrestling card. So in the world of pro wrestling, when you're putting together an entire show, let's say there's going to be 16 matches on the show. You want the first match to get the crowd invested. You want them to, get interested in what they're about to see for the remainder of the show. And then you want to have peaks and valleys, you know what I mean? Like ups and downs and pieces where you can reflect a little bit more and pieces where you're going to probably get some emotion going with some of those. So I tried to arrange it along those lines. The only thing that I felt was hard to do was picking the final one, because in a wrestling show, that's the main event. That's usually what the people paid the money for. And I didn't want to do it that way for the final one. So I had to change the thinking a little bit so that they really did seem like, and the truth is, like, as I narrowed them down to 16, they all had equal value to a large degree. You know what I mean? Like there's worth in each one of them. If I felt one was so much more important, then it should have been a list of 3 or 4. You know what I mean? So at that point, it just came down to what felt like a good flow. You know what I mean? Like and that's kind of like, I figured always end with less is more, because it's a good way to go out to think, simplicity, like a good idea to leave you with. So that was kind of the thinking.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nick, this feels like an article, and maybe that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about. It really feels like a great article, if not, something more extensive. So these are fantastic.
Yeah, interestingly, I did. There was, and I don't know if it got accepted yet, but our PA Principals Association puts out a quarterly magazine, and there was no theme for the issue, so their parameter was a lot less words, so I had to shorten it tremendously. But I did submit to see if it would get published in there. So I'd be curious to see if they pick it there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. Such strong words of wisdom, Nick, not only today, but kind of throughout as you've gone through the 16 over 4 different episodes now. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom gained over 25 plus years of experience doing this work. So thank you.
All right. Well, it was good. It was good being here today for this episode. We're going to sign off now with a little plug for the engine behind when we record, and that's Riverside FM, Rick. And here's a little plug for Riverside as we sign off. Oh, that was shorter than I expected. All right. We'll see you next time.